items that we just knew we needed to do something with them to keep them safe and preserve them. And talking with other people in Winnipeg, it seemed to be the same story. They had heirlooms from their family members as well. And that's the basis of the museum project. So February 1st was our founding meeting where 27 people gathered, and we discussed this idea of having a space to share the Canadian experience for Black families. From then, we met a few more times, and we've decided on a few core directives for this space. We named our organization Black Heritage Experience Manitoba. And the three main principles we're looking at right now are the importance of honoring our past, celebrating our present, and building the future. Our mission is to create a living, evolving space that centers the words, the truths, and experiences of Canadians of African descent and the wider African diaspora in Manitoba. We seek to foster community, celebrate resilience and excellence, and promote education for justice and joy across generations.
I have my 4 children here, and I feel it's very important that they know our history and our background. So that's why this drives me into being a part of this program. Besides that, I'm part of the African communities of Manitoba here in Winnipeg. I sit as executive director for ACOMI, African Communities of Manitoba. And this is something that is of great interest to us. So personally, this is a great value to me and to my work and to the people of African communities and people of African heritage. So that is why, another reason why this, this lines up with my values, because we need to tell our own stories. Our stories have been told by different people for many years now. My children need to know their background, their history, their tradition, and the values that it brings. It is very important for us to know. I've realized that I'm not going to take them back home. This is their home. Yeah. This is the place they've known. And this is Canada for all of us. But they still need to know our traditions. Some of them are very simple, but they are very important. Our history and people who fought for us from colonial rule, they need to know all that. And they need to also know that we stand on the shoulders of these very important people, trailblazers, who have brought us this far.
I feel that growing up in Winnipeg and going to school, we didn't learn about slavery in Canada. The Canadian government does a very good job of, burying that history. And, I've had to do a lot of my own work and research to understand where we come from, our roots.
Use the skills that I have learned as a professor, as a historian. Because, historians we're obsessed with one thing. We're obsessed with truth. You can't be a historian if you don't want to tell the truth. And truth is something which is inclusive. It can't be exclusive. It has to be inclusive of everything, or else it's not really truth. And I find that working on a museum, and I tell you this other little story. I've taught high school in Canada, in Manitoba. And the other day I was looking at some of the textbooks that were officially used in the school. You will not find the word black in the textbook. It doesn't exist.
We're at this moment, an interesting moment in a time talking about history where, Jackie Robinson's name could be erased out of history books a couple days ago. And there are a lot of ways to think about that, but one thing for Black folks for all of us to think about, but for Black folks especially, we understand this idea of erasure. We understand what it feels like, for centuries to be in places where there are people who who want our sweat and want our labor, but don't want our presence. And so, and I think about Judy talking about being able to talk about and reflect on 8 generations of her story, and sit here in this flesh and bones and not be able to think about one generation of my story, and not be able to understand the history and tradition and the things that ground us in our people and our families in the way that so many of you are able to do. And so I think the personal value that brings me to this work is reconciliation. And that is personal reconciliation, and I think a desire to want to make sure that we are able to capture and honor tradition moving forward. And I want to be able to ground my personal history in the history of our people.
So my passion for this work comes from understanding that the archival process is colonial, and wanting to see a counter archive from Black voices. Also, many of us don't know each other, don't know our history, things like that. For myself, for example, I'm almost 40, and I grew up not knowing family or a lot of where we came from. And I think it's important that the next generations don't experience that.
I'm interested in this work because I think it needs to give voice. I think sometimes our voices are sequestered, although within the family and talking within the community, within the Black church, in the North End community, we always had voice. Because there was always stories, there was always family, there was always connection. But as time goes on and we, lose our family and lose our elders, those voices and those stories, they're not told as much. And the opportunity during those times when I was growing up, when there was pockets of resources in the sense of telling stories, or there was youth groups, once that ended, where were those stories? Where were they documented? Where could they go? They were within us, or within the elders, or with our aunties or uncles. And that's diminished over the years. And I think it's important to give voice to that, give recognition to that, and give connection to that. And if that is one of the main purposes of the Black Cultural Center that they're trying to build, I think that's very important, because it's going to stand and it's going to have voice. And the youth are going to know that we're all connected. So this is the time to have that sustainability, to have that history, to give voice, and also, I think, very important to show connection between family and between our cultures, because we are connected. When I was a youth, I played steel drum. I was 15, my sisters played steel drum. Got involved with carnival, because I knew that was part of my culture.